She cleaned the wound, administered antibiotics, and carefully bandaged it all in a quiet corner of the emergency room no file number. No insurance, no paperwork, just a frail, ragged veteran with resigned eyes and a nurse who couldn't turn away. It was the one moment someone treated him like a human being, not a bureaucratic problem. But that very act, born of professional conscience and pure compassion, got her suspended the very next day. No hearing, no warning. The room was so quiet she could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Across from her sat Richard Ellis, the hospital director, his face expressionless, his tone flat, as if he were reading from a report, not speaking to a human being. "Miss Carter," he said, placing a paper on the desk, "your actions yesterday constitute a serious violation. Unauthorized use of medical supplies, undocumented treatment, and admitting an uninsured patient." Emily sat straight, though her heart felt squeezed. "I did what needed to be done. He's a veteran. If I hadn't helped, he could have gone septic." Ellis didn't even raise an eyebrow. "You know the rules. We cannot let emotion disrupt the structure. If everyone acted on instinct, this place would fall into chaos. No recognition, no inquiry into the patient's condition, just policy, code, and mechanical." He slid the paper toward her. "You are hereby placed on temporary suspension pending investigation." Emily didn't ask questions. She didn't plead. She stood, removed her name badge, and placed it gently on the desk, a quiet farewell gesture. A decade of service dissolved into the air because of one act of compassion. As she stepped out into the hallway, the corridor suddenly felt colder than ever. She didn't cry. But deep inside, the sharpest pain wasn't from losing her job. It was from realizing that compassion no longer had a place in what was once called a healing center. And from news of the incident spread like wildfire through a dry forest. A young colleague had quietly posted a short headline online: "Nurse suspended for helping uninsured veteran." Within hours, the post had been shared thousands of times. In the comment section, the public responded with a wave of emotion. Some wrote in anger, "My dad fought in Afghanistan. When he came back, he was denied treatment because he didn't have an insurance card. Emily is a hero, not a rule breaker. This is why we lose good nurses. They care about people, while the system only cares about numbers." Others simply shared the post silently, accompanied by a hippie emoji or the single word, "respect." But not everyone spoke up. Some coworkers messaged Emily in private, "I support you, but please don't mention my name. I get it, but I still have student loans to pay." Silence, too, could feel as heavy as an accusation. She sat on her porch as her phone buzzed relentlessly. Messages, emails, comments from strangers, veterans, doctors, even first-year med students. One message stood out among the hundreds of supportive notes: "I know him, you don't know me, but I'm coming." Emily set the phone down. The late afternoon breeze swept across the porch, cool against her skin, and in that quiet moment, something stirred inside her, something close to hope. Because she realized, when the system stays silent, society will speak. The next morning, in the main lobby of St. Vincent Medical Center, the security guard suddenly stood at attention, as if in the presence of an officer. A sleek black SUV with government plates pulled up to the front entrance. A small American flag mounted beside the license plate fluttered silently in the breeze. The elevator dinged, the door slid open. A tall man stepped out, his face stern and etched with the lines of many hard years. On his shoulder, 4 silver stars unmistakable. A 4-star general. "Good morning. I'm looking for Nurse Emily Carter," he said, his voice deep and steady, commanding silence across the lobby. The receptionist stammered, She was suspended yesterday, sir, and you are—" "I'm General Marcus Albright," he replied, eyes steady, "and I'm here to speak with the woman who saved my friend." "And your friend?" the receptionist asked again, hands trembling. "Harold Jameson, U.S. Marine, the man your hospital refused to treat." The entire lobby froze. Every gaze followed the general's movements like a storm slowly rolling in. No one knew exactly what was coming, but everyone understood the game had changed. The air grew tense, nearly suffocating, as General Marcus Albright walked into the center. He didn't knock on the executive office door. He didn't need an appointment. His voice echoed through the space, calm, resolute, unshakable. I'm Marcus Albright, commander of the Pacific Rapid Response Forces. And I'm not here because of a title. I'm here for a man, Harold Jameson, the man your nurse quietly saved, while this hospital refused to see him as a human being. He paused. His eyes scanned the crowd, faces filled with discomfort, confusion, and quiet shame. Just a cold meeting, and her ID badge revoked as if 10 years of service had never existed. Emily Carter, 34, didn't plead. She wasn't angry. She quietly walked out of the hospital, the place she once called her second home, with teary eyes and one belief not yet broken: doing the right thing shouldn't be punished. On her way home, she asked herself, if she could go back to that moment, would she choose differently? The answer came without hesitation. Number, did Harold not tell you what happened? That he once crossed the kill zone in Fallujah unarmored, under heavy fire to drag me out from beneath the wreckage when our convoy hit an IED? No one responded. No one dared interrupt. He didn't ask if I had insurance. He didn't demand that I fill out a form. He acted, because life is life. And yesterday, Nurse Emily Carter did the same thing. Oh, his voice dipped lower, but his eyes revealed a pain too deep to hide. Harold came home with shrapnel still in his back. No home, no family, no updated file at the VA. He lives on scraps of benefits, sleeps in an old truck parked behind a gas station. He's almost 70. And when his leg became infected, he waited 5 days before coming to the hospital, not because he wasn't in pain, but because he was trained never to complain, never to be a burden. The room went still. A few young doctors lowered their heads. An older nurse wiped her eyes. And when he needed help most, General Albright concluded, this system, this place that calls itself a center for healing, turned his back. He didn't have to say more. His glance toward the exit said it all. It wasn't just the truth he delivered, it was the shame he uncovered. After that explosive morning, no one at St. Vincent Medical Center worked the same way again. The once bustling hallways turned quiet, as if the entire building were holding its breath, waiting for something to collapse. Staff began looking at each other with unease and heaviness. No one said it aloud, but everyone knew something in the moral foundation of this place had cracked. A young nurse quietly pinned a small American flag onto her scrubs, a violation of the uniform code. A medical resident taped a sheet of paper to the staff break room wall. Scrawled across it in shaky handwriting, compassion is not a violation. At the nurse stations, cases were processed more slowly than usual. The casual laughter was gone. In meetings, where voices once debated treatment protocols, silence prevailed. Heads nodded, eyes avoided the gaze of supervisors. Many felt betrayed. They hadn't joined medicine to obey formulas and deny people. They chose this calling because they believed every life was worth saving, regardless of insurance or paperwork. And when they saw a colleague punished for doing exactly that, that belief began to fracture. What exactly are we protecting? A nurse whispered in the break room. Procedure? Or people? No one answered. But in the silence, resistance was building not through protests or placards, but through awakening. Because now they weren't just questioning Emily, they were beginning to question themselves. Hospital Director Richard Ellis hurried into the lobby, tie askew, his steps heavy with worry. From across the room, he saw the 4-star general standing tall at the center of the atrium, surrounded by staff, patients, and the early flashes of news cameras. General, Ellis began, forcing a professional smile, I'm the executive director here. Your unannounced arrival, we weren't. General Albright didn't move. His gaze cut through the polished glass of excuses. I came to speak publicly, and in a public space, he said, voice calm but absolute. Harold Jameson, the man your nurse quietly treated, is a hero. He saved my life in Fallujah, twice. No body armor, no hesitation. And yesterday, the very system he fought to protect turned its back on him. Ellis tried to maintain his composure, his throat tightening. He began to reply, General, we are required to follow protocol. Treating someone without documentation, without insurance, it's a legal liability. We can't. The real liability, Albright cut in, is forgetting what medicine is for. The room fell into stunned silence. Ellis lowered his voice. now slightly unsteady. I don't deny Nurse Carter acted with good intent, but we have boundaries. I have to protect the institution. By sacrificing conscience? Albright tilted his head. By letting good staff walk away in silence while patients are left behind in pain? Ellis looked down briefly. His voice softened. What do you want me to do? Start, Albright replied. By admitting the fault doesn't lie with her. It lies with this system. From the upper floor, staff stood quietly along the railing. Patients in the waiting area stopped scrolling on their phones. Everyone was listening because this moment wasn't just a confrontation. Because she knew sometimes doing the right thing might cost you everything, your reputation, your job, your career, but it lets you hold on to one thing no system can define: human dignity. The emergency room door slid open. A lone figure stepped inside slowly. He said nothing, only gave a small nod, almost as if to apologize for the intrusion. His name, Harold Jameson, was printed on a faded ID card. Hanging from his keychain was an old dog tag engraved with U.S. Marine Corps. It was a reckoning, a challenge to humanity inside the walls that claimed to heal. He looked to be nearly 70, tall but frail, shoulders hunched from weather and time, torn jeans at the knees, a khaki jacket worn thin at the shoulders. But it was the deep gash on his right calf that made people wince, swollen, infected, oozing pus. The smell of antiseptic and dried blood lingered in his breath, heavy, quiet, and full of endurance. The receptionist glanced at him and shook her head. No insurance. We can't take him. The words were spoken lightly, but they landed like a sentence. Emily stood nearby, clipboard in hand. She witnessed everything. In that moment, she no longer saw a homeless patient. She saw a man who had once been willing to die for the flag stitched to his shoulder. His eyes avoided contact not from guilt, but pride and exhaustion. I don't want to be a bother, he whispered. On one side was the bold print in the employee handbook. On the other, a human being in pain, abandoned. Emily knew which choice would get her punished, but she also knew which choice would let her still deserve the title nurse. So she stepped forward, knelt beside him, and said quietly, I'm going to help, but you've never seen me, okay? Emily, what are you doing? The voice of head nurse Lisa Hammond called out from the front desk, thick with suspicion. Emily didn't look up. She was crouched next to Harold, gently lifting his leg to examine the wound. The skin around it had turned reddish purple. It oozed, radiating heated, deep infection. If left untreated, he could lose his leg. He's not in the system, Lisa said, arms crossed, her eyes a silent warning. No insurance, no file. We're not allowed to admit him. Emily finally looked up, calm but firm. So that means we just let him sit here and rot? She asked, her voice soft, but every word edged with steel. Lisa shook her head and turned away. I'm not getting involved. You're on your own. Emily turned back to Harold and unzipped her medical kit. She pulled out antiseptic gauze, antibiotics, and sterile bandages. He winced slightly as the hydrogen peroxide touched the wound. Ma'am, I don't want to be a burden, he said, voice trembling with both pain and shame. Emily smiled gently as she wrapped the bandage and said softly, You once carried weapons to protect this country. Today, let someone protect you. She pulled a protein bar from her coat pocket and placed it in his hand. I know it's not much, but you shouldn't be hungry. At last, she gently squeezed Harold's hand and whispered, I'm going to do the right thing, even if I get punished. But if anyone asks, you never saw me, okay? He nodded, and in his eyes, for the first time, a quiet flicker of hope appeared. The next morning, Emily was called to the executive office on the 5th floor. The door closed softly behind her.